Welcome to Coastal Front. Join us each week as we sit down with the movers and shakers of Vancouver to discuss stories of business, politics, accomplishment, and failure. Our aim is to keep you dialed into what matters most in our city. Now, here's your host, Andrew Johns.
Good. Here we are, Bart Jaworski, CEO and founder of Group 11 Resources. Thanks for coming back to see us again, Bart.
Thanks, Andrew. Great to be here again.
Yeah. So you were actually our first podcast, and we've learned a few things since then about podcasting, and we've also learned a few things more about Group 11 and how bad the markets can get.
Yep.
We've been through it before.
Yep.
So let's just dive right into what's going on with Group 11 today. Maybe just for the first-time listeners that haven't heard about the story before. Real high level, can you sort of tell us what is Group 11? Who's your company? What are you about?
So Zinc in Ireland, we're an exploration company. We've got 2 deposits in hand, and we're very actively exploring the largest land position that we've been able to put together in the country. So not land position, but the actual licenses, the mineral licenses in the country. We're the largest.
Yeah.
And we have 2 of the largest remaining unmined zinc deposits in the country, outside of the ones that have been found and already mined out. So we have the second and third largest zinc deposit. So it's a fairly significant company from that perspective.
Yeah.
And we're almost like a much larger company, like an intermediate company housed in a small little junior. Yeah. Right. Because of the huge amount of land position that we do have. So that's kind of the broad stroke. Yep. We're listed in Vancouver on the TSXV, and
trading symbol
ZNG. We're also on the OTC as well in Frankfurt.
Yeah.
So, but basically where we're at is we are exploring 2 main projects, Ballinallack and Stone Park in Ireland for zinc. Again, there's a bit of lead and silver associated with it.
Yeah.
And we are in discussions with, or very active on trying to get strategic investment right now. Obviously, with the market being where it is, with the trade wars, with Chinese slowdown fears, with Brexit, all those kind of issues, with supply-demand fundamentals for zinc, we're doing the best we can here. And luckily for us, we had some really stellar, interesting drill results, which have helped those discussions, and I think we're getting a lot of interest. So there's a number of discussions going on. Obviously, these things may or may not come to fruition. They may take months. Sometimes they take years, right, to negotiate. So who knows what's going to happen? No one has a crystal ball, but we're actively going down that track, and a lot of effort going down that track, as well as the exploration track, obviously.
Yeah, great. Well, that's a good, great overview, and you're right on your comment about all the fear out there in the market. And it has been a tough market for junior companies like Zinc, Group 11. Even though the zinc itself, supply of zinc, is continuing to be a problem, and we talked about this last time. I'd like to just touch on that again. We've got in front of us here, this is always a great way to start off this dialogue, is just simply looking at the supply situation. So maybe you can just talk to a minute about this graph we're looking here, Bart.
Yeah, well, we're looking at the zinc price versus LME inventories in green. The black line is the price line. So basically, it shows you where we're at over the last. This is since 1995, so you're looking at 24 years of history. But basically, where we are in the market is we're on an uptrend generally. But we had a really good year, 2016, 2017, and we're starting to come off it a little bit because mine supply is starting to recover. So there was a big glut, or originally a glut, and then mines started to come off stream, like Lachine, Galmoy. There were 2 Irish mines actually. Century Mine in Australia started just be exhausted, right?
Right.
So supply started to come down. Environmental regulations started to really bite in China, and China's a huge producer of global zinc supply.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're about 35% of zinc global output, mine supply. And because of the environmental regulations, which have really come in, that has thwarted a lot of new mines coming on stream. And the mines that are the mom and pop operations currently in production, they've been shut down because they don't have the capital to basically abide by these new regulations.
So these are regulations uniquely, how does the regulations work? It's not a global regulatory body, it's per country?
Per country, yeah.
So the standard of mining from an environmental impact perspective could be quite different in Ireland and Australia from, say, China.
Absolutely. Some things are the same globally. The thing to watch out with mines is usually the water. You have to, and that comes specifically down to the tailings and how you're treating your tailings. So with zinc mines specifically, more specifically again, you've got lead. And if you've got any pyrite in there, that oxidizes, creates acid, and then that leaches your lead into the groundwater if you're not careful. And that's the biggest problem with lead mines. And that's what the Chinese regulators are trying to avoid in the future.
So what was going on in China before this? Were there people getting sick and there was like a lot of damage to the planet on these mines, or any idea? Yeah.
Well, I think if it's done by mom and pop operations, small little operations, and there's no environmental oversight like you would see in other jurisdictions like Ireland, then you tend to have issues. The nice thing about Ireland is you've got a lot of limestone.
Okay.
And what you do then is to control an acid, you add a base, and limestone is a base.
Oh, interesting.
Basic material. So it's very easy to control the pH. And if you can control the pH, then acid doesn't form, and therefore you don't have any lead leaching out into the system. Plus, you have the option of having better containment or dry stack tailings or things like that. So there's a number of ways you can avoid the problem.
Yeah.
And in most jurisdictions you can. And this is what's being implemented in China now. But of course, that takes time and takes money and, correcting old issues.
Yeah, bad habits. What is dry stack tailing? What is that?
Well, tailings is basically the waste of your mine. Once you process, you crush it down, then you run it through flotation, and then you take the goodies out. What's remaining is your tailings, and you have to put that somewhere.
It's just like kind of rock that has no value.
Yeah, it's like sand, basically.
Sand.
It's like sand. It's got a bit of reagent in it, and depending on the metal mine, you have different chemicals in there, so you want to contain it. If you have dry stack tailings, you basically take all the fluid out of it, and then it's very easy to monitor in the future, because there's really, if you put a cap on it, there shouldn't be any leaking of anything.
Oh, I see. Because
there's no
material's dry.
Yeah,
for
it's
the
just
most
dry.
part.
So and then you stack.
What
it
happens
up
with the chemicals though, or what's the water part of that? How do you deal with that? If you're doing a dry stack tailing.
If it's dry stack, then if there's no water ingressing into the tailings, then there's no issues that coming out again.
Yeah.
If it is a wet tailing storage facility, then you usually lay down a number of plastic sheets, mud, things like that are impermeable, and then that stays there. And then you put a top on it as well, so with rainfall it doesn't come over the brim, I guess, and leak out somewhere. But it's a tailings management process, so it's a fairly well-worn path to mitigation.
Yeah,
I guess that's how you treat it.
Of course, here in BC, we had a few years ago now that Imperial Mines had that tailings pond break, right?
Yep.
I don't remember what the name of it was, but that was pretty bad for the environment.
Yeah, that's something you want to avoid. See, the problem is if you have a combination of high rainfall and topography. Yeah. That's really where you run into problems. So you have your risks go up exponentially at that stage.
Potentially
seismic activity, absolutely.
Which you don't get in Ireland.
Yeah, so Ireland tends not to have earthquakes.
Yeah, they got a lot of rain.
Tends to be very flat. You do have rain, but again, it should be mitigated by the fact you don't have these steep valleys. For example, what happened in Brazil, terrible disaster there. That was a combination, with an iron ore mine with Vale. So that was a huge problem, and that was two mine. It's a high volume mine, so that's the other big factor. Iron ore is a big high volume type. Because you're producing a lot of tonnage. Yeah. Therefore, lots of tailings.
Iron ore, just so people know, is basically steel. Right?
It's the ingredient of steel.
It's a main ingredient.
Main ingredient of steel. So you have iron ore, you mine it out, and you have a lot of tailings left over. And if you're putting it into these steep valleys, and you're basically putting the bottom of the valley, you build a big dam in your water. So what happens with high rainfall, and over many years, you might destabilize that dam, and all of a sudden the whole thing bursts downstream, and there might be villages downstream, right? So that was what happened there.
Really?
So it was.
Is this it here? The Brumadinho Dam disaster?
Yep, that would probably. Yeah, that's it.
So that's January of this year.
Yep. That was that had a lot of knock-on effect.
250 people died?
Yep.
Wow.
It was a big disaster, and now that I think was the second one.
I didn't even remember hearing about this.
Yeah. No, it was a huge disaster. And there's the problem where you have high rainfall, high volume of the mine, and you have steep topography.
Right.
And so right now the Brazilian government has basically put a stop to this type of. So they're putting everything into. I think they're analyzing what's going on, how we can mitigate this going forward. And there's been as far as I understand, again, I'm not close to this, what's happening in Brazil. Yeah. I just read the headlines. But from what I understand, that there's been a hold, everything's been put on hold there. And the end effect is that Vale's had to cut a lot of its iron ore production, which has obviously increased the price of iron ore. And then the other major place for iron ore is Australia, the Pilbara.
Okay.
And that's where you've seen a lot of economic benefit, because that's a much safer place to mine iron ore. You're never going to see those issues in a dry, flat place like Australia.
Like Australia.
Like you would in Brazil, right?
Yeah.
Maybe, that's the big question that we have to ask ourselves. Do we mine in places where you have such risks? And should the government be allowing that or not?
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. So mining can have a big societal impact, and that's our job, is to make sure that we use best practice not to ever have that happen.
Yeah.
To neutralize the tailings, so you never have issues come up like that. The tailings are safe, and it's on flat ground, flat solid ground, low seismicity. Yeah. And that's so we're blessed in that way in Ireland, where we have the best of both worlds. We're flat, no major issues, and it's easy to mitigate it. The grades tend to be high, so you can afford to do it as well. You need to be able to have a fairly robust mine plan, right, in order to be able to do it. Which grade means you can do it right.
Yeah, yeah. So thinking about us before we dive into the individual projects on Group 11, just talking high level Ireland mining. Let's talk about the rest of the pros and the cons. The pros are, like, one of them is reasonable topography. What are some of the other pros of, like, why would a company be at an advantage in mining in Ireland versus, say, Brazil or Australia? And then I'm going to get you to do the hard part, which is talking about the cons to that as well.
Okay, so the huge positives that you have in Ireland is the infrastructure. Okay. So not let alone the geology, which is world class. So you have lots of goodies in the ground, very good geology, very good chance of finding good, solid, high grade deposits. That's number one. So, why
is that? What happened to the planet? On the planet that made this such a great place to mine, when people don't really think of Ireland as mining?
So there was an ocean that closed here, the size of the Atlantic, called the Iapetus Sea, 400 and some odd million years ago, and it basically closed where Limerick currently is. So there's like a big fault line from Limerick to Dublin, so basically east-west across the country. So that's the Iapetus suture, big fault structure that goes deep into the ground and upwells a lot of fluids. And it just so happened that Ireland around that time was around the equator, really hot, lots of limestone formation, corals, and lots of critters. Yeah. When we drill, we see millions of little critters around that are 400 million years old.
Crazy.
Really cool rock to look at, really interesting. So that's what was going on. And limestone just happens to be a very good host for fluids. And it has a lot of salinity, a lot of salt. Yeah. And upwelling from below is a lot of fluids with metal in it. And so the two fluids mix, they precipitate out the zinc. Okay. So you don't have that type of situation in many places around the world, even though it seems not too uncommon. Yeah. But it's really in a world-class way how it happened in Ireland around. Okay. So that's why we're looking there, and that's why Ireland is known to be number one in terms of zinc found per square kilometer. Wow. So there's a lot of deposits over a relatively small area. Number one in the world in terms of concentration of zinc deposits
per square
kilometer.
Is there any other metal other than zinc that is just so abundant in Ireland?
That's it. I mean, you have zinc, you have lead as a secondary.
Sheep.
You have sheep, you have silver.
Do you have silver?
You have silver, and I think my hunch is that we'll be able to find a lot more silver as a byproduct credit, because the old timers didn't often assay for silver. Maybe it was expensive back in those days, but for example, Ballinalack, there's a number of silver grades which are really high. And yet, very few of the actual intervals were ever assayed for silver. A lot of it was just zinc and lead, maybe copper, sometimes barium, sometimes. But anyway, the silver, I think, is very much underrepresented there.
Wow.
So it's interesting. I've got a hunch, too, that there is some gold exploration in Ireland. Yeah. Definitely in the north, you have a world-class deposit in Northern Ireland, not in the Republic, but in Northern Ireland, the Curragh deposit. Yeah, and that is a world class. I would call that a world class deposit. It's fairly large and it's super high grade. Really nice little deposit there. Yeah. But in the Republic itself, there's also a little bit of a gold exploration going on by some groups. Mm-hmm. And then what's interesting is in the bogs, some of the bogs, you have old sluice boxes. They're probably 5,000 years old that have been unearthed, and they were mining gold in certain parts of the country.
Really?
And there's a lot of gold artifacts that have been found in the bogs. So in the back of my mind, there's always this thing where, I always think that there's probably some gold to high-grade gold veins to be found in the country. But that's not what we're looking at.
No.
We're squarely focused on the zinc, lead, silver.
Yeah.
And that's what Ireland is really known for.
Right. The discovery of something different than what you're looking for has happened before. Some big stories. I think about Voisey's Bay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's just maybe a little bit more diving into the zinc world. What types of metals are typically a customer alongside zinc? You said silver is one of them?
Silver and lead, predominantly.
Silver and lead. Okay, so silver, lead, zinc.
That's it.
Someone could be doing a silver mine, and they'll probably run in some lead and zinc.
Yep,
Someone could have a
true.
lead mine. I don't know if people do they mine for lead?
They do, but it's always part of a zinc story.
A zinc
Usually
story.
you don't have
Okay.
a lead only mine. Yeah.
And what other metals would be? What would a metal be? Would it be unusual for you to, by chance, find a big zinc deposit and gold in the same place? Is that unlikely?
If you have a VMS deposit, which is a different type that we have in Ireland, and in Ireland we have an MVT, not to get too technical, a Mississippi Valley type, so that's usually devoid of gold, so silver.
Yeah.
And then VMS deposits can be gold rich, so you can have.
What do you have in Ireland?
We have MVT, Mississippi Valley type, and then say in Alaska, Niblack would be a great example. VMS deposit, which is volcanogenic. And there can be a part of it which is gold enriched, and you can have a gold credit. So there's a number of situations like that in there. But with it comes other deleterious metals sometimes, so it's a bit of an offset.
What was that place called in Alaska, you said?
Niblack. As an example.
MVT, I think, is what we wanted to pull up.
MVT.
MVT.
Yeah, Mississippi Valley type.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so we've talked about the pros of Ireland. One of the pros, which is there's lots
rocks,
of I like
rocks and roads.
Rocks and roads. Lots of goodies in the ground. What are some of the other sort of positives of mining in Ireland?
So the concentrate that you produce from a mine tends to be clean, very saleable, very highly sought after. So you can blend it down with dirty ores around the world. You're close to your consumers, which are your smelters.
Okay.
In say the Scandies, like Scandinavia, Germany, France has smelters. So you're close. You've got a clean product close to your customer. You have year-round tidewater, and you have, no matter where you are in the island of Ireland, you're only probably about an hour away drive along a paved highway to your port, which is really nice, which means you have a very low threshold for being economically viable. Yeah. The rule of thumb in Ireland is 10 million tons at 10%. So 10 million tons of ore, grading 10% zinc and lead combined, would, as a rule of thumb, would get you there.
Okay.
So that would be your baseline point where you start going, maybe I should start a preliminary economic assessment on this. Start looking at some feasibility studies here.
Yeah.
If you're 5 million tons like we are at Ballinlack and Stone Park, we're about halfway to that threshold, that rule of thumb threshold. But again, that's where we have to do the heavy lifting and prove to the investors and investing community that we have legs to be able to grow that. And with the case of Stone Park, we think we can grow that much, much bigger than that 10 million ton threshold.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the idea.
Okay, that's good. And what about how friendly is the Irish government when it comes to mining?
So they've been very supportive. They come to PDAC every year. The EMD is the Exploration and Mining Division of the government that is responsible for regulating juniors and all exploration, mineral exploration. Yeah. There's also a group called ICREG, run by Professor Murray Hitzman from the States, actually, but he's an MVT expert, a geologist. And basically, ICREG is funded by industry, by government, and academia, and one of their main remits, not all of them, but one of their main remits is to help find groups like ourselves, basically the next big zinc deposit.
Okay.
So we have the government and industry sort of working together with universities and cutting edge technology in that way. Yeah. And then obviously I think it's in everyone's interest, especially with the specter of potentially no deal Brexit, but hopefully not. But a Brexit nonetheless will have some kind of an impact on rural Ireland, which is mostly agricultural. Yeah. And most
when
of
you
the
say
farmers.
Impact, you mean negative?
Well,
positive?
It's hard to see how it would be positive other than Dublin having a positive impact from companies moving away from London and maybe relocating to Dublin, the next best sort of English speaking country from that perspective. Some of the bigger countries just don't have enough room to move to Dublin, but the small to medium-sized companies definitely have room, and there's a lot of construction going on. So Dublin is probably going to benefit from Brexit, or has been benefiting from Brexit, but rural Ireland is not, because I think a lot of that agricultural product, the beef, dairy, butter, what have you, most of that is exported to the UK. All of a sudden, you have a no-deal Brexit.
Someone's going to have to work.
It's a pretty scary prospect,
Wow. Now, what about, you obviously don't have to deal with First Nations, Indigenous groups in Ireland.
Correct.
What about like local government or landowners, that kind of thing? Is there an issue there?
There has not been any issues for us. There's always some kind of, I'd be disingenuous. I didn't say there's usually some kind of, with any project in any part of the world. But how it works in Ireland, usually we sit down with the farmers. So we take out the prospecting license, and how it works in Ireland, before you get that prospecting license, that is advertised in the local paper, and people have an opportunity to go, hey, wait a second, what are these guys doing, and why are they doing this here, and blah, 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 blah. And the government then goes back and says, well, this is, what it is and what it isn't, explains to people, and then those answers get answered, and it's only after everything gets answered then you get your license granted, and at that stage you can go in and do your exploration work. If you want to drill, so diamond drilling involves a drill core that's about the width of this glass, right, all the way down. So it's a cylinder of rock basically you're pulling from the ground that could be a few hundred meters deep, but you have to explain that to people. So you need more regulation, more permitting for that, but it's usually a fairly quick process in Ireland, but it involves a lot of thinking about groundwater and things like that, so there's no damage, and you clean up after yourself, and you need the permission of the farmer. So in every case so far that where we have wanted to drill, especially since the IPO, that has not been a problem, so thankfully. So everyone's supportive. There's the county councils, which technically don't have I guess an indirect say in this, but so far we haven't had any issues on that front. I guess one material fact, I guess, in this kind of general topic area is that one of the major mines, actually the only mine in Ireland right now, is Navan. That's Boliden's Navan deposit. Okay. And they permitted recently a raising of the berm, so raising of their tailings facility walls. Okay. So that was permitted. That's right beside Navan town. So they've been mining
the site
there.
Visit, we went. Okay.
We didn't go to Navan.
Oh, no. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I'm getting mixed up with a different site visit.
Yeah. But we went to Gort Drum, actually. Yes. That was a different mine from the 60s. It was a copper mine that is now being used as a fish farm and a gravel pit. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah. You can grow fish there. Yeah. Even though, It
was a copper mine. It had all sorts of metals in there, but all the metals are benign, and they're growing all sorts of fish, and there's a commercial fishery in that. Incredible. So, it's a good example of actually what you can do with a mine once it's expired. And that's actually what the vision I'd have for Irish mining is just that you have a mine. Obviously, Ireland is a high tourism country. So I think what would be nice to have is a mine that's not ugly. It's an area where people would want to visit potentially. So you have the Wild Atlantic Way or this or that, you can go there, but you can go in the center of the country and also visit some, Irish zinc mines, with the view of looking at it from a scientific perspective, right? That's great for kids to learn about geology, physics, mathematics. It's all encapsulated in what miners do. Yeah. Big trucks involved, who doesn't like that from, when you're a kid. Absolutely. So that's something fun for, if you have a visitor center there, and it's part of the heritage, or you have a nice visitor center that's where the heritage of the history of that area can be encapsulated in some kind of what have you, an art installation or some kind of sculpture, and it's and the mind sort of flows out from that, and it can be part of the tourism industry. It doesn't have to be hidden away and shoved under the carpet. I think it could be something that could be celebrated in the country. And again, if it's done right, there's no reason that it can't be also an industry park or industrial park where you have a bunch of entrepreneurs in there that have a cheaper office space or what have you. So you can have just a little community there where you can have business, different business interests in there. You have a visitor center. Yeah, it's a center for innovation, science, geology, physics, what have you.
I think it's kind of an interesting idea. You brought up such an important, I think, a point that I want to make I want to speak about for a moment, which is I find the world consists of when it comes to mining, two types of people.
Mm-hmm.
If you're involved at all and you have an interest in mining, you're either an anti-miner.
Yep.
So you're one of these environmentalists, and like I'm just as passionate about making sure that I have a minimal carbon footprint on the planet as most people.
Yep.
But I find there's these people who are super anti-miners, not realizing how hypocritical they are, because everything they do in their life requires to even just open the door handle. You had to have that mined, right? Like everything,
mined or grown or taken from the sun. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And so those people want to make it seem as though no one should be mining anything ever. We should all live under a tree, not a rock, because But the other group is people like you and I, who I feel like you got to try and build your business, but be quiet about it, because you don't want to be pegged as being this, person who's, scraping the earth of its resources and damaging it along the way. When reality is, like, if both, like, I'm not so concerned about the second group, because they're standards in countries like Ireland are so high anyways. You guys, people like you are doing mining at such a high standard compared to what would be done in, say, like China. But I feel like if this other group could just realize, like, look, until the world stops consuming as much as they're consuming, which is not going to happen anytime soon, the supply is the demand for the supply is there. Someone's got to do it. Might as well have it done in Ireland, where the supply,
it can be done right.
It can be done right.
Yeah,
and you can promote that and say, like, okay, you know what? Put these people at a high standard so that they're not having tailings ponds break on them and that type of thing. But if they can do all that, I mean, that's the best you can possibly expect, in my view.
It should be done that way, yeah.
100%.
It should be done where it's safest to do so, and the grades are high enough that it can support it being done right. And so I think that's a key thing, and should be.
And you're creating economic value, you're creating jobs. Like, that's the thing that I think a lot of people forget, too, is that it's not just this dirty mining operation that's polluting the planet and making everybody sick. It doesn't have to be like that at all.
No,
you don't have to pollute the planet virtually at all. You can create the ore that you need to have to take to market, so that you can have your iPhones and your fancy water bottles and your flights to the vacation in Mexico. And you can also employ people and create economic value and pay taxes and generate money.
Half the pie is tax, right?
100%.
Half of the economic pie is tax. Typically.
So hospitals and healthcare and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And the spin-offs and the brownfield site that can go with it. A great example of that is what Randgold was doing in Africa. Now Randgold is part of Barrick, but and Mark Bristow's group, I mean, they'd have mine sites that were converted to maize farms or fish farms. They do micro lending to all the local areas. I mean, that's a solution that works for Africa.
Yeah.
In Ireland, you'd have different solutions. You know? But
the fish farm,
the fish farm is a great example, but also, maybe micro lending too. I don't know. Maybe that would work. That's something that has to be more etched out and thought about. But there's no reason to have cross-disciplinary actors in this kind of, in this theater, if you want to call it that, right? Yeah. Where you have multiple benefits from it, and it's not just something that is hidden away.
Exactly. It's
not the way of the future. I think the way of the future has to be you embrace it, but it has to be done right. Yeah. And like
lots
with
of
anything,
transparency, but also like promote the fact that you're running a really good business.
Yeah. Well, it's like say with traffic and what Tesla's trying to do with avoiding accidents. I mean, cars are there whether we like it or not, and they do cause huge amount of benefit for humanity, but also there's accidents, and if you can minimize those, then you have a win-win. And same with mining. If you can minimize or mitigate the environmental impact, which you can do within this, I mean, it's not that complicated. It's more of an economic issue than it is a technological issue.
For sure, I bet. Yeah.
Then that's the answer,
and
that's the future.
That's where government can step in and just regulate it. And just say, this is the standard. Yeah. You want to mine here, and then the analysts and smart people out there can run their models, and it either has an economic value or it doesn't. Let's just to kind of challenge you on Ireland. What are some of the negatives of trying to mine in Ireland?
The negatives, I think the perception that as I was on with Lobo Tigre, and he was saying, well, there's these cute sheep on the fields. How could you be mining there? And that's probably the biggest negative. People think of it as golf courses and
Yeah.
And
Guinness
and somewhere where you go for vacation, and that's very true, you know. But there is a lot of industry there in the country. So that's what I was talking to Lobo about. Is you do have a lot of foreign direct investment. There's a lot of pharmaceutical companies, tech companies, and they all need space. And you know, they're all in not just in the cities, but in rural parts of the country as well. I mean, Ford has been building cars there since, you know, for the last 100 years.
Yeah.
As well, so it's not like Ireland is just beautiful,
tourism,
you know, rolling, you know, a few green paddocks
farming,
and sheep. It's not that at all. It's a fairly, I mean, it's a
it's
world-class country with a lot of diversity economically.
So it's more of a perception. Is probably the perception.
Yeah, I'd say perception is probably the biggest thing. Other than that, I mean. What could I say? What negatives are there? I guess it's probably just the perception of it. It's relatively small, but I think that's a net good thing. But I mean that would be the major thing. And I guess the Irish population probably wouldn't be too aware of the mining industry itself. I mean that's something we have to overcome as well.
Okay.
So that's probably a good point to mention. There's a lot of mining companies. Historically, mining has been going on in Ireland for thousands of years, but modern mining has been going on since the 1950s, 1960s.
Yes.
But it's tended to be foreign companies coming in, and they mine and they pay all their taxes, and again, the benefits there are for the government, and then it gets distributed down.
Yeah.
But you haven't seen a lot of actual Irish companies,
right,
doing, you know, bigger, or companies that have started from scratch in Ireland, like we have. But you know, we're now sort of Atlantic because we have 1 foot in Ireland, 1 foot in Vancouver, or 1 foot in Canada. So we're trading in Canada.
Yeah.
But I see Group 11 as an Irish company, Irish Canadian company. Really, it's kind of a blend. There is actually an Irish Canadian Business Association in Ireland, and they're doing quite well. So they've got a number of members. So there is quite a lot of trade between Canada and Ireland, but
okay,
that's something to point out as well.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Excellent. Well, let's dive into the 2 big projects that you're working on right now and where you see the upside. Obviously, the stock's been like all juniors in the space these days, not just in zinc, in general in the markets. I mean, we're coming in mid-August 2019. Markets are just getting crushed in the junior side. The only space that's getting any love, as you said earlier, is the gold sector. We're going into negative interest rates right now. Around the planet. There's a lot of weird things going on in the economy and the markets. And so it's been a tough go for you guys, but you managed to raise some money earlier this year. You got some money in the bank right now, and you're now doing drilling. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Where are you drilling right now?
At Ballinallack. So we're drilling our first hole there about 700 meters deep underneath the existing deposit in the next prospective layer down called the Navan Beds, which just happened to host one of the largest zinc deposits in the world 50 kilometers away in that Navan Bed horizon. So very excited to be.
Is this what this 3D model is on?
Yeah.
Is this Ballinallack here?
This is Ballinallack basically.
Can we maybe just, before we go there, let's pull up on Google Maps somewhere where we can just see the area that we're talking about, or maybe you have it on your slide deck. Where's the best place to find that, Bart? Is it
probably in the middle
on the slide deck?
There's a slide in the deck that shows where we are in Ireland. So we're kind of, to describe it, it's just north central. Yeah, the slide upwards. There we go. Yeah. So Ballinallack is in this area here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So right beside Navan, there's Navan that you can see right here, basically. And Navan is Ballinallack is 50 kilometers away from Navan.
Yeah.
Navan is one of the largest zinc deposits in the world, and we're looking for Navan bed hosted mineralization under what is already known to be a zinc deposit.
Yeah.
In the higher up layer. So it's very exciting.
So Ballinallack is kind of halfway between Dublin and Galway, but more north, heading towards the
more or less a third of the way, I guess.
Third of the way up,
or maybe half. Yeah, close to half.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's a good way to think about
it. Almost dead center of the island itself. If you include Northern Ireland, it's like yeah. Okay.
It's fairly central.
Okay. So that's Ballinallack, and you're drilling there right now.
Yeah.
And
we just put out this fancy 3D model, which I'm
so let's take a look
very
at that.
Happy to
explain to the viewers who are. But keep in mind, a lot of people that are listening are not going to see this imagery, so you're going to have to describe it for them.
So I mean, it's a shallow deposit, and it really hangs together. You can see it's all in one piece. That the blue thing there is basically the deposit. Here's the surface, and The yellow layers down here, basically the Navin beds. So we're basically looking at drilling underneath this blue stuff.
So what's the blue that we're looking at?
The blue is actually the deposit itself. So that's the zinc. The blue is the zinc.
And this is mapped out in a 3D format based on all these little poking of holes in the ground that you've pulled out.
Yeah, you can see these little matchsticks everywhere.
Yes.
Each one of those matchsticks is a drill hole that probably costs $50,000 to $100,000.
And how old can some of these be? 20 years old?
These the discovery was made in the early 70s.
Okay.
So there's quite a bit of history on this. It was actually a lot of work to pull all these historic reports together.
I bet. Yeah.
And pull all the logs and put them into 3D
But no one could have ever done this, maybe even 5 years ago, right?
They could.
Could you pull this off 5 years ago?
You're right. I mean, the technology has really advanced, and we're using Leapfrog here. We used Equity.
Leapfrog's the name of the software company that.
Yeah, Leapfrog is the actual software package that Equity Exploration use, and they've got a very good guy there that basically put this together for us. Fantastic. Okay. We put all the long sections and cross sections together on paper.
Yeah.
So we did all that work internally and went through all the data. And then gave that to Equity to put together, and this is basically what came out of it. So we're very happy.
Going back
with the
to
result.
I like doing this in layman's terms because I know geologists like you will make this head spin. So the above ground surface, where are we at that? Where is that level? Where is the surface? How far underground is this blue area?
This is only 10 meters to. This is actually the topography here. I think I can flip that on, but it's shallow. It's 300 meters deep at its deepest.
That's it.
Yeah. So this is kind of what it looks like.
Okay, so there's your farmland.
So that's your farmland, right?
And there's all these holes that
you look underneath, and then there's the deposit.
Wow, that's so cool. All right, so let's turn that topography off for a second.
Yeah.
So that blue area is a pretty good estimation of what the reserves, or what do you call it?
They're inferred resources, so they're not yet reserves.
Yeah.
In technical terms, reserve is when you put economics around it. So we're not there yet.
Not yet. Okay.
But this is a resource, an inferred resource, which is the lowest confidence category of that of the resource package.
Right.
There's inferred, measured, indicated.
Gotcha.
So we're kind of at the earliest stage.
This is why you're called a discovery kind of company.
Yeah. So it's kind of got to a point where it's fairly well described, and now we want to find, another one of these or another two of these. And the first place we want to look at is this area 4B and 4C.
And how far under? Those look like they're quite a bit deeper.
And those are a little bit deeper. They're a few hundred meters below the current resource, so we're talking about a hole that's 700 meters to pierce this point over here.
Okay.
And that's really...
And now that you've got all this data into this really cool software, every time you get a drill result pulled out of the ground and it goes public and you make all your disclosures and everything, you can then populate that data into this.
Yep.
And this blue area that we see as being the inferred resource, or what do you call it? No, it's not called a
inferred resource.
Inferred resource will continue to evolve and expand or change, because every time you stick another drill hole in the ground and pull it out, you're getting a better idea of what this thing's looking like.
Exactly.
I mean, theoretically, you could keep doing that until you've drilled the entire thing, but then you've got it all. So
now you've got it all, and it costs a lot of money. So here you can play around with the grade shells and stuff, so you can see, well, where else did we hit zinc that didn't really qualify as a resource yet?
Oh, I see.
And you can see all the sort of light gray blobs, and there's a lot of them here. So this is our target area 1. There's another blob which you can't see very well through here, and in this area. So we've got 4 main areas where we think we have potential to find more goodies.
So how many are you going to drill all 4?
At this stage, we're focusing on the most prospective one, or the one that could really be a game changer if we hit.
Okay.
So there's 3 other zones which are much shallower, actually, and that's if we're just looking at this as a resource expansion exercise, we probably go to area 2, area 1, and just start infill drilling.
Yeah.
But we want to answer the big questions, like what's happening on the most prospective side of that fault, which is area 4. Okay. And that's where we're starting off drilling there. So hopefully if we have some joy there, we'll be very happy. And
when did you start that drilling?
Only a few days ago.
Okay.
And last week.
And when do you expect that drilling to end?
It'll probably take us to mid-late September.
Okay.
I'm thinking, depending.
It's pretty fast turnaround.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
And then how long after that before the results would come out to the market so people would know?
I guess we have to log it. You have to split it. You have to send it to the lab. It depends how busy the lab is. We use a lab in Ireland.
Yeah.
So we have to
But if you had to make a rough guess.
Probably another 2-3 weeks after that.
Okay, so we could be looking by mid-October having some news come out on this.
October-ish would be a safe bet, yeah.
Okay, so that's the drilling on Ballinallack.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've got another project too that you're really excited about.
Yeah, well, this is the one by Limerick, the city, close-ish to the city of Limerick. We're right next door to Glencore's Palace Green deposit.
Yeah.
We
Let's
have
go back to that map.
Huge land position there. And we have a deposit there as well.
This is Stone Park we're talking.
So this is Stone Park.
Yeah.
Again, right beside more the west side of the country.
Very close to Limerick, just southeast of Limerick.
Yeah. So it's a large land position, about 1,200 square kilometers, and we have a deposit there as well in the inferred category, which is also about 5 million tons. This time higher grade at about 11.3% zinc and lead, which is considered quite a very robust grade.
Yeah.
And
I think you told me before anything above 8 is considered to be quite good.
It's,
right?
8 and above is quite good. Depends on the tonnage, but
you'd never see something like 40 or 50%, right?
You can
80%.
80 is too high.
Yeah.
Stoichiometrically too high. But you can have 40 to 50%.
Wow.
But to have a lot of tonnage at that grade is extremely rare.
Yeah.
Extremely rare. Most zinc deposits in the world, I would hesitate to guess probably 7-8%, 9%. So in Ireland,
and sorry, what's Ballinallack? What's it running at?
8.7.
Okay,
zinc and lead.
So 8.7. So you're on.
It's in the ballpark.
You're in the average category.
Yeah.
But lots of already historic data and signs of a big discovery there.
And the idea, if we could nail some mineralization in this lower horizon, that should be a better host than the higher horizon. So I'm hoping that we can get better grades and better thicknesses, and hopefully some nice silver kicks there too.
Yeah. Have you ever drilled down? Has anybody drilled down that far at Ballinallack yet?
Well, they tried, but that was the thing. It has been done, but too far away from the fault.
Yeah.
In our estimation, based on our current interpretation of the structures, the faults.
Yeah.
So the drilling that's been done, they thought they tested this target, but in reality, when we modeled it, we realized that they were too far away from the feeder.
Yeah.
So we have to be closer in, and no one's really done that yet. So
Gotcha.
That's why this is it could be a first.
Yeah. Okay.
When we drill it.
Great.
Yeah.
Are you doing any drilling at Stone Park right now? Or what's
no,
the
but
plan?
we just finished a 5-hole program. We announced that a number of several weeks ago now.
Yeah.
And we were very happy with the results because not only did we hit
good
zinc,
results coming out.
We got Ballywire, which is one of the prospects, and we got really good zinc there, 1 meter to 2 meters of sort of 6% zinc and lead, in an area that really wasn't very well known for zinc. So there's no deposit there. It was just a hunch that there might be some zinc there. So that's a really good result, and that could be sort of in
And how deep was that?
That was about 780 meters deep,
Okay,
so it's a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
But the thing, it trends to surface.
Okay.
And there's zinc shallower up. And we think that if you cross the fault, you might actually have the main body there.
Okay.
So based on what we found there, we know where to go next. And there's some 300-meter deep holes there that we can drill that we might have a serious chance of making some good headway there.
Yeah.
So making hopefully a discovery there at some stage.
Okay.
So that's Ballywire, and that was all good, and that's a very easy one to explain.
Yeah.
But the one that's a little harder, and I think that's washed over most people's head and doesn't really resonate with investors, is Kilteely, which is just 10 kilometers along the trend south of Palace Green, Glencore's Palace Green. And there...
Can we see that on here?
That would be the next slide down. So if you go down a little bit more down, another slide, another one down, another one down, another one down, another one down. We're getting warm. There. Yeah, so go up there. So there you're looking at the side view. This one here. Yeah, this one.
And how do you pronounce that?
Kilteely.
Kilteely.
Everything's kill something often in Ireland. So this is Kilteely. And basically that pink rock there that you see is volcanics. And this is the second hole ever into the pink rocks on the southern half of this giant body. It's about tens of kilometers.
Yeah.
And we think that we know that this those pink rocks, effectively the volcanics, have a lot to do with zinc mineralization in this camp in this area of Pallasgreen. So we wanted to test underneath it and just to see whether we're getting warm. And we actually found some really busted up rock. We found lots of violence. In layman's term, lots of violence. Lots of fluid flow, lots of brecciation, which means broken up rocks, lots of pyrite, iron sulfides of different varieties. So it looks like we're getting close to some action. Huh. And we think from the experts that have taken a look at this, we might be on the edge of a new zinc system.
Oh, wow.
So we're just on the outer boundary. There is an elevation, elevated levels of zinc and lead in there already that we're seeing, but we haven't hit the discovery hole, but hopefully we're just on the edge of it here. So that's what the significance of Kiltili is. Really hard to explain that in a news release, but that's basically what it is.
Well, that helps.
And
that's why we do these podcasts, to kind of simplify it, right?
Yeah, and I think, that has accelerated or enhanced our discussions with certain groups that maybe, are kicking the tires and things like that.
Well, that's a good segue into when we first started. You said we're at a stage now where we're looking for a strategic investor. Now, what is that for layman's terms? What does that mean?
Somebody, a larger group that's not retail or maybe your normal institution that has a portfolio of stocks. So maybe some specialists out there like private equity groups that have a real interest in zinc, or they have a view that zinc is going to be the metal to own in the next 2 to 5 years. Yeah. And they want to position themselves, or it could be a larger mining company that really has a strong view on zinc and wants to get in and participate. So we're looking for groups that are specialized.
When you say participate, do you mean in buying shares of the company, or you mean actually being involved in a particular project?
Well, in general, these types and we're not the only ones that are looking for strategic investments. I'm sure there's lots of companies our size that are looking for that as well. But these deals can be all sorts of shapes and sizes. So some can be top co-investments, right? Some can be asset level investments. So it all depends, and they're all discussions can vary across the spectrum. Yeah. So, and it's just a matter of figuring out how much you're willing to give up here and there, and what you can live with, what you can't live with, what the best groups are. There's a myriad of variables involved, but it's nice to be having those discussions. At least no guarantees. Oftentimes these deals, they never come to fruition, right? You can be working on a deal for a year, and then it goes sideways on you at the 11th hour, and that's just the nature of the beast. So a lot of companies, I'm sure, are in the same boat as we are, and knocking on doors and having discussions. So we're quite actively working on that front, but so fingers crossed we'll see what happens there.
Yeah. Great. Okay. With respect to the current market, I mean, this is a tough market. You've seen these before. You haven't been in the role you are today, but you've been there. You were in the financial crisis during that time. I think, were you in Ireland then? Were you?
No, I was here. I was
here as an analyst,
covering uranium and platinum stocks during the downturn.
Right. Yeah. During the downturn. Yeah.
During the downturn. But that's what I remember. Everyone said around that time. We sat around. We had a dinner. Around that time with institutions, and everyone was saying, it's all over for mining late 2008, all over, because it's recession. So who cares about mining? No, it's all over. Maybe gold a little bit, but like base metals, forget about it. And I'm hearing those same types of sentiments right now. Yeah. It's basically saying, we could be, there's a lot of fear in the market because of trade wars. We could be entering into a recessionary period. So it's all over for base metals. Yeah. And if history is anything to go by, what I think tends to happen is if you have negative interest rates, it's all about stuff at that stage. Okay, absolutely. Gold definitely, silver definitely, but zinc is no different in terms of an inflation hedge. If you're forced into a decision where you have to own a zero interest rate yielding asset, or own a similarly zero interest rate bearing asset, but it's got some exploration and development upside, takeover potential, all these other goodies in there. Sure. Why not go for the second, right? Instead of being stuck with the first. Yeah. So that's the kind of dynamic you're in, and I think that interest you're seeing in gold will cascade into the base metals.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be virtually zero interest by the average investor, institutional or retail otherwise, in buying 10-year and 30-year bonds right now when they're basically flat to negative. Yeah. The one challenge I think you have in other juniors is that the alternative is to buy shares in Royal Bank, paying 4% dividend yield. Yeah. Or like today, I was looking on the S&P 500, the U.S. markets. Pfizer is now got a new 52-week low. It makes money.
Right.
And the dividend yield is now 4%.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that some of that money might not spin off. And like you said, some investors might say, hey, if I can either sit on an ore, like a company that's got ore in the ground that I know I've got, is going to have some value in the future, versus in my view, almost a piece of paper that's going to slowly devalue over time with a negative interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you're right. I'm sure they'll hopefully. The thing is, you got to get a change in the sentiment around the junior sector right now between oil and gas and mining. Man, it's just so negative.
Yeah.
But then that's often, and this is no advice, you got to consult your financial advisors. But in my history, I've always found, of course, is like the classic Warren Buffett saying, which is I like to buy when people are selling.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? And right now, there's a lot of people selling.
Yep.
Yeah.
There is.
And, and then you look back 2 years from now and you go, man, what a great trade that was.
What a great trade that was. Yeah, absolutely.
Up, Group 11 at a fraction of the price of what it was just a year ago.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. It's all down to the central banks. If the central banks weren't there, then clearly a recession means bad things for the commodities and resources.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
Unless, but when you start printing money, fiat currencies, that's when the trouble starts, and that's where investors would sort of veer into more commodities and things that you can inflate away.
Yeah.
And that's where your safety resides.
That's true.
And so that's sort of the situation perhaps that we might be in. That it appears that way, and there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of uncertainty out there right now. So a lot resides with the central banks, and a lot resides with what happens with this trade war.
Yeah, sure.
So much is riding on the trade war and its resolution. So my take is, it's going to be resolved.
Yeah.
But what form it gets resolved in is the question.
Yeah, yeah. And that's all really neat macroeconomic stuff. But let's go back to the reality of a company like Group 11.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of all that, you get a good discovery, that can be a complete game changer. Even in a bad market.
Absolutely, because we are a discovery company.
Yeah.
First and foremost, we're about a discovery.
That's the message I think people need to take away.
Yeah.
There's a risk. There's obviously a risk there. You don't get a 10 bagger or a 100 bagger without the risk, but it's not like the price of zinc is plummeting, right?
Yeah, it's not. Well, it's come off a little bit. It's still above $1. It's $1.02 last time I checked.
What was it? Out of interest, what was so $1.02? What was it a year ago?
$1.20.
So that's nothing. That's not a drop off.
When we started Group 11, this was 75 cents, 80 cents.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's actually better still than when we started. When we started Group 11, we were faced with gapping downwards Chinese stock market, where they had to, they would kill trading after about an hour and open it up again the next day. Right. And the government was intervening in that. So and Glencore, I remember, was below £1 a share, and the analysts calling for the demise of Glencore. So it was really dire back. It's easy to forget that, but we were living through that because we were trying to raise money. Yeah. And people were saying, you're crazy. Whoa. What are you doing?
But you did it. You pulled it off.
But we did it. Yeah. So it was tough sledding, but it was worth it, and it turned around, and it was good. It was good. Yeah. And I think we're in the next kind of, it's always cyclical. There's always bumps in the road, and this is definitely a bump in the road. Yeah. But if we do get resolution.
Speaking of money, I don't know if you can disclose this or look at least the last financials. How much cash did you have on the balances of last financials?
We had $920,000 Canadian, $920,000 in the Q1 results ending March 31. Yeah. And then subsequent to that, we raised $465,000 Canadian dollars.
Okay.
But obviously, subsequent to that, there's been some spending as well. So net, we're probably just sub $1 million bucks, generally speaking.
Yeah. Okay. And the share price, of course, is way down right now. We're talking a 4-cent share price, 4.5 cents, which gives it a market value of about $2 million.
Yeah, 2.5.
So you're literally buying. If you bought the stock today, you're getting 50% cash and all this potential upside.
Yeah, exactly.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Yeah,
no kidding. And what's interesting, when you and I talked a few weeks ago, you told me about some of your other peers in the market. And they're suffering just as much, in some of the cases, worse than you guys.
Yeah, if you look at most Zinc pure plays, and there's not that many. No. Trevally is probably a good one to look at. Titan is another one. Fireweed, ourselves, Hannon Resources, Zinc One maybe. Arkle, which is our JV partner in Ireland. You see the same share price chart. Yeah. So they're all very correlated. Yeah. Which again, so there's a big groupthink element to the markets, and that's probably getting worse, not better, because of all the passive trading. But we're all sort of in the same boat, right? So when all of a sudden that changes, all of a sudden, 100%. I'm sure we'll all correlate upside. To the upside.
Yeah, good. Well, Bart, let's tell you what. Let's to wrap this up.
Okay.
Let's just recap a few things. So one of the things I want to just recap. So first of all, mining in Ireland, kind of top reasons again, just to recap why mining in Ireland is such a pro, considering it's not really considered a country that's a big on its mining, but for mining zinc in Ireland, what were the things we just?
Well, long history of modern mining, 60 years, great rocks, great infrastructure, close to consumers, clean product. Stable politics, stable democratic, staying in the EU. So those are all really good positives to why Ireland.
Close to smelters, you mentioned that one.
Close to smelters,
not having
in
to
the rest
with
of Europe.
Indigenous groups.
There's fairly good relationships there, and fairly
and
clear.
high standards too.
Very high environmental standards, very very good oversight from the government, a lot of participation from the communities, etc.
Okay. And then particular, let's also just recap in particular Group 11's two main. I mean, the reason you're super pumped about the company right now.
Well, discovery potential number one. We have, I think, a lot of irons in the fire in that department. And what really excites me now is we've done so much work now to get to this stage that we're actually starting to see that. We have it down, especially at Ballinlac. You can see it in the 3D model where the target is. And it's taken a lot of work to get to this point. So, the team is gelled, and the geological models have started to really gel from the original Big Think idea to, from which is basically looking from outer space, looking down at Ireland, zooming in further, doing all the homework, and now we're at the point where we know exactly where to drill. So that's really exciting, right? Because that's where really the benefits could potentially come. And the scale that we have at Stone Park, the project there, with a neighbor that we do have that's already discovered 45 million tons at 8%.
And that's Glencore?
That's Glencore, neighboring to us, and I would argue we have the same type of potential on our ground. So that's and again, we have better and better geological models, and we're honing in on where to drill. And obviously with the Kilteely hole, we've shown that we're getting warm. So this isn't just pie in the sky anymore. We've actually pinned it. Look, we seem to be on the edge of something. That's super exciting for me.
Well, that's really cool. So Group 11, you're the CEO. Who else have you got on your team that's important to speak about?
Well, we have Dan McInnes on the as chairman. Brendan Cahill.
And to just because so people know they've never listened to this before, who's Dan McInnes?
Dan McInnes was the CEO of Mag Silver. He's very well renowned geologist. He's been involved with about 7 discoveries in his career so far. He's also the chairman of Balmoral. So he's, and plus he spent a lot of time in Ireland back in the 80s. Interesting. Very interesting guy, and great guy to have on the board. Brendan Cahill, Alessandro Batelli, 2 other directors that we have on the board, very astute guys. Brendan is the CEO of Exelon Resources, silver mining in Mexico. And Alessandro Batelli he's a CFO, very accomplished. CEO.
He's great to have on that. He's well accomplished
CFO.
And then yourself, and you've got 2 other key people on your management team.
So David Furlong is our COO. So under me, you have Sean Heinrichs, obviously, he's the CFO in Vancouver. And Spiro in Vancouver, and then David Furlong basically is the Chief Operating Officer in Ireland. He's Irish geologist and spent a lot of time in Ireland. So and then John Barry, who's also a co-founder of the company. Myself, John, and David co-founded the company together at the same time in early 2015. And John's also a very, very experienced geologist in the country, and so all of us are. And then Mark Holdstock, I should mention as well, very key to the group, very senior geologist that we were very happy that he came on board. So
he joined more recently.
He joined about a year ago. But he helped discover part of Navan, for example. Deep experience. He did a lot of consulting work in the country. Super experienced on Irish zinc deposits, and great guy to have around.
Great. And lastly, Bart, just we're what is it now? The 12th of August. The doldrums of the summertime for juniors is almost over. What do you got for investors that are looking for press releases to come out between now and Christmas? What are we expecting just want to recap that one.
From now to Christmas, I would say just obviously look out for the drilling at Ballinallac. Look for the press release on the Limerick or the Stone Park Telus airborne survey. So we're just waiting for that results from the government. The government has flown a giant airborne survey, and we're just about to get that data. So hopefully, who knows what that will bring, but hopefully a few surprises. I'm crossing my fingers. At least we can see better where our trends are, where the mineralization might reside. So we'll see. So that could be interesting. And generally, like I said, we're looking for, we're knocking on a lot of doors in terms of strategic investment opportunities. So whether that comes in the next 6 months or 12 months, who knows, or if ever, but that's something we're working on as well.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you the best of luck, Bart. I'm really excited for your future. I know you've been putting a lot of time and effort in this, and look forward to seeing those press releases come out over the next 6 months. Thanks for coming in and seeing us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Bart.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.